Hey, I'm Cyclon, and today I am coming not with PoE but with Last Epoch content. Now, couple days I have been playing it. I have tried to approach it somewhat casually and more focused on making my own unique build more than trying to just rush it, try hard it, go trade and get a maximum character pushing the limits of the game because I actually don't know what the limits of the game is. I've kept my information gathering in this game to a really big minimum. So I took a guide when I was leveling a bow build. I leveled a bow build, I got into the rift, the monoliths, and I got, I think, 4 done before 1.0 released. And then I took an acolyte, I took no guide, no nothing. I stood in offline mode because I wasn't able to log in at launch. I read through all the notes, and the next day I started playing. And I kind of ended on this specific Bleedlock, which I don't know how close it is to the meta Bleedlock or not, but it does feel quite good. I do know the existence of 3 uniques, the boots, the gloves, and the body armor that in combination make it a low life available. And I am trying to go for it. I haven't found the gloves yet. I know that they drop from this Blood, Frost, and Death monolith from the final boss. But yeah, I don't know how exactly the interaction works, but I am quite curious how it will turn out. So for now, I'm going to kind of give a quick build overview, not a really full guide, a semi-guide, an overview of the cards that I have if you want to try it out too. So the build itself is pretty fun. Oh wait, sorry, I forgot. I did also grab from a Max Roll Bleed Warlock guide that I don't know if it's the best one, if it's a different one, it's a random one. I don't know. I didn't look at it. I just took the left where it says the overview, looked for loot filter and download the loot filter. Cause I kind of wanted to make my own loot filter. I just had the issue that I have no idea what bases were good and what mods I ended up wanting. So I just took the recommended Bleedlock net filter or max roll filter, and I took that and tried it with that, and it felt decent enough. So what I did with the build, it started as Ketonic Fissure as the main main bleed apply, and then utilizing Rip Blood, Bone Curse, which I'm actually still spec'd into Bone Curse, and Spirit Plague. But Rip Blood fell off like about level 60, level 70, and I replaced it with Soul Feast. And once I got to level about 75, 80, and I was able to put like 20 skills in my 20 points in my skills, I did replace it completely. I dropped Rip Blood completely and got Chaos Bolt instead. However, that required a really big mana uptime, and to fix that I had to adjust some other things. So I only recommend Chaos Bolt once you have your mana managed. Once you have a good mana management down, the Chaos Bolt can replace Rip Blood completely. In last Epoch tools that I found, I am going to be recommending it with a Rip Blood, but just know from this video, Chaos Bolt will feel better. You just need to get to the stage where you have the mana sustain, the mana gain, the mana on kill, mana on hit, and all that stuff for it to feel good. So, to I guess kind of first showcase it, I did manage to get to these greater rifts, or I keep calling them greater rifts because they really remind me of Diablo 3 rifts. I don't know. Like right now in level 100, it does feel somewhat squishy, but it also can apply the damage. So we use Fissure to get Torment going, to get Chaos Bolt going, to get the Bleed Overload started, and then we have Rip Blood to kind of target the damage enemies. Soul Feast can only damage enemies where there is a curse applied. So we have tons of ways to apply curses. The Fissure applies curses via the Torment and via the Chaos Bolt. Then we have Bone Armor, Bone Curse, which Chaos Bolt can trigger. Before that I hardcasted it. That Bone Armor is able to apply curses. And then we have also, if we have a big enemy we want to damage, we can utilize Spirit Plague, applying a big damage curse and applying many bleed stacks on an enemy. and that results in just massive amount of bleeds. I think as high as I've seen was 400. The build plays very safely unless we are standing in a big pack of enemies and they attack us before we can get our bleed going. A one-shot is one thing I wasn't able to survive with this build so far. Everything that wasn't a one-shot, I am pretty able to mitigate, reposition, and have time for that. So for that, it feels pretty good. But how exactly does it work? So, on our tree, we do want a little bit of the damage here. We want 20 points, because we do need the 20 points to do everything in the Warlock. So we need... When I did it, when I didn't knew what I was going for, I spent 8 points here, 8 points here, and 5 points here. And it turns out what we really want, we want intelligence, we want the vitality, and we don't really need the damage, because that is just a 24% increase. It's an increase isn't as good as a more multiplier. So we want 8, 8, 4. We want to spend first the 4 here, then whatever's needed here until we can get this. Grab 8 here and then spend the rest here. And once we are level 20 or about level 20, we should be able to unlock our mastery, which is the Warlock. And on Warlock, we do want pretty quickly that mana sustain from 5 points in Soul Stealer. Then we grab 5 points in Spiteful Decay, getting the life and the passive bonus for the more dot per cursed or 2 cursed enemies. We take the Bleed Overload by putting 5 points in, and then we just spend the other 3 points here when we currently can't progress further and need points filled. We spend 4 points here for the Rip Blood cast. Now this feels really great early, but it will drop off as mentioned. We then have 5 points in Harrowing Armor and 5 points in Dark Protection again to get their bonuses, which does feel pretty good and makes us a decent amount of tankiness. And then filling points we can fill in Occultist Mind, grabbing 5 points in Wizard to apply Wizard on enemies, again for the bonus to take less damage. We apply 1 point in Encroaching Darkness to apply Cursed, basically Anguish to single targets, because this allows us with the Cursor I get to in a moment. Then again we can fill points in Malefic Body, because again we want a high intelligence score. We have Fleeting Crown for haste, and we have Vessel of Chaos for increased damage over time multiplier, and also for each Ultimate Overload, which we have 1, we have another more multiplier. And then we apply 3 points in Seer and 2 in Aspect of Death. Now I will mention this. Aspect of Death, if you put 3 points into this, it will kill you. Only put 2 points into it. I don't know other than with the low life, which I heard that it can work. I don't know how it will work, but I have the hope that it works, that I can put more points in here, because an increased health and more damage per negative armor on you sounds pretty strong, especially with the Harvest self-bleed, but I don't know how it works. And a Cursor with 3 points is a really great survivability layer. If something does a big chunk of damage to us and doesn't kill us, we have a massive ward pool that allows us enough time to reposition ourselves, even if our blink skill is offline. So we had these points, and then the rest of the points we can just spam in Malefic Body. Wizard doesn't have a high priority, Malefic Body doesn't have a high priority, spending the points in Occult Mind does have a high priority because we want the mana, and we also can grab Apocryphia from the Lich Node for the mana region if we still have mana issues. I had it, so I grabbed those points in between. Like I said, I'm currently level 82, it does feel pretty decent as a build. The skills, early on, again, instead of Chaos Bolt I had Rip Blood. So I recommend having, I'm actually going to swap into here. I recommend having Rip Blood into Bone Curse, into Fissure, into Spirit Plague, into Soul Feast. Rip Blood will be our first spammable skill, our first target skill. We want the Bleed chance. And then we want the Splatter AoE. Then we want the Eviscerate AoE. And then we're going to grab the Thirst Node to kind of mitigate the mana cost of Eviscerate. And if you can technically spend, if you have more points, you could get Arcane Absorption, but when we get to like level 50, when we unlock Soul Feast, we do want to only have Rip Blood as a secondary thing, which we automatically cast. We don't really want to target cast it anymore, so there is not really a big point in spending points in this, because this needs stealth cast, so instead we grab AoE for the Blood Splatter. Then we have Bone Curse. which we could go for the bleed, but I noticed we don't really need bone curse to apply bleed, we just needed to apply curses. So we're spending 1 point in crippling anguish, 2 in cultist fervor, and then 5 points in cursed limb. This will allow we cast it, and for 5 seconds we have basically a curse on hit. So whenever we rip blood automatically or manually from something, then there's a bone curse cast on that area. It is an AoE thing, so we can even scale the AoE further later, and that spreads the bone curse from enemy to enemies, and we just cast it automatically and manually every 5 seconds. And it just spreads the curse pretty wide, and that allows us later for Soul Feast again, and just feels good because it is a little bit of additional damage and it's cursed, so then all our mastery things that trigger on having cursed enemies do proc there as well. It also has the chance to shred some armor, but we don't really care about that as we are bleed build, but it does allow us to access Marrow Thief, and Marrow Thief gives us bone armor, which is a nice, again, defensive layer, and just having that is really great in maps, because there's really the bosses you need to manually dodge. They are the things that one-shot us, but this helps us not getting one-shot in maps if they're just a bunch of enemies or rares. And then we have 4 points in Confirmation, and then a last point in Sigil of Mortality. The mark on death, again by automated bone curse, applies an automated another curse, and that just means the enemies are marked and they take more damage, which is perfect for us. Once we get to level 20, I think this spot unlocked on level 20, we get Ketonic Fissure. The first thing we want to do is rush Blood Gulch, so it's a bleed build. Then we can spend additional point. I would at least recommend having 2 points in here, because this means it applies 2 bleed stacks per second. Or your ignite chance per second, that's how I understood it. And then it also has a base chance, so this can apply 2 to 4 bleeds per second. Really nice to apply bleeds to an enemy. We then go to the left side, picking up the mana cost, because this is a really mana hungry skill. And we also take Fellfire. So if this Spirit of the Fissure lands on a bleeded enemy, because this is converted to bleed via Blood Gulch, then the enemy's bleed is spread. So if there's a rare and a bunch of small enemies around it, usually the bleed from small enemies spreads to the big enemy, and it just feels really good. We also have the increased full frequency, so this happens more often. That's why we only need 2 points in here, and we don't need to force more points, because we're just going to be more spirits landing. I don't see any cooldown on this. And later on we can pick up of Gloom and Flames and Chaotic Rupture. Gloom and Flames only once you have the mana sustain, and Chaotic Rupture only once you drop Rip Blood for Chaos Bolt, again if you have the mana sustain. I also, this is, I only went into this later on, I don't yet fully know how good it is, but with the Chaos Bolt, having access to the impact dealing damage, meaning that it can also now deal the bleed damage, and then the Acid Skin is another curse, which again works with our passive that removes curses to heal us, or deals more damage per curses on things, and dealing less damage to us per curse on them. So it's another way of adding another layer of survivability to our build. Then we also have Spirit Plague, and Spirit Plague is another reason why we wanted Acid Skin, because this can cause a guaranteed crit while we are not really speccing into crit, meaning that Spirit Plague, which is kind of our single target curse, but with a few additions of, for example, that Acid Skin, it also starts being a bit more spready. So what I noticed is we have this, with Pestilence we have increased the global damage over time bonus. We have the bleed, so we curse something and I guarantee supply 3 bleeds. Then we have this, so now everything we damage that enemy, be it with Bone Curse, be it with a Fissure, be it with Rip Blood, with everything we apply, we have a 150% chance to apply another bleed on it. So we have a bunch of hits on the target that is cursed by Spirit Plague, and everything applies more bleed. And then we have Exsanguinate, so this thing means that the bleed has physical penetration. I don't fully understand how that works, but it deals more damage, and that is nice. But it applies bleed stacks to you too, which can be seen as a downside, but from what I've seen, as long as we use this, not casting it on everything we see, but only on the big rares, now it will only really apply once to us, so we have like 4, 5 or 10 bleeds on us. And if it spreads via how it works, it doesn't seem to apply a new bleed to us, it just seems to spread, so there is no downside of it spreading. And this is just additional damage, and we do have Defilement giving us a bit of additional mana if we use it on rares, and having a bit of mana sustain if it spreads. So the spreading we can do with Plague Burst, we hit something, and we have a chance for it to go to other enemies. And if we crit it, it automatically jumps over, so now having Fissure apply Acid Skin, meaning Spirit Plague, we're going to get a few crits in, we're gonna get a few Plague Burst random procs, and just going to spread in itself, and in death it's going to jump over to something else as well. The duration is a bit low, it's just a few seconds, so whenever you see your self-bleed buff to be removed, you just need to recast this. That's how I keep the uptime of this somewhat high. And the last thing, this is Soul Feast. As you've seen, I haven't been using Rip Blood, or if you looked, I haven't been using Rip Blood in-game, I have used Soul Feast. Once we got access to Soul Feast, we're going to replace Rip Blood. So what we need with Soul Feast, we need to pretty quickly grab the 5 points of Incision, so it is now a bleed skill, and it's now, instead of giving us ward, it heals us. Then we can grab Engorged, 2 points in Rest, and 1 point in Usurp. This will allow us to infinite cast this on bosses or rares. So whenever we need to deal with a bunch of small stuff, we can cast this, and with our mana on kill and mana on hit, we're going to sustain on with the mana regen. And if there's something big and we need to keep casting this over and over, we apply a curse on the enemy, so like Spirit Plague or Bone Curse, we have a fissure underneath the enemy, and then we just spam the shit out of Soul Feast by holding it down, and it's going to apply massive amount of bleeds on enemies, and that makes it feel really nice. So once we have these nodes, we then can pick up 1 point in Blood of Souls and 2 point in Crimson Bounty to have a better hit on this, so it automatically hits anything cursed in the vicinity of 30 meters. So if we just say, okay, 13 enemies is decent, but if we take 2 points in bounty, it's now instead of 13, it's now 21, and 21 is usually the maximum amount of enemies that's spreading around you, and they are gonna die fairly quickly if it's only a bunch of small stuff. So this is nice to have. And then we have points in Hunger to have mana efficiency combined with a reduced mana cost to actually manage to keep casting this thing. So yeah, that is basically it. If you replace your Rip Blood with the Chaos Bolt, we want to have the Chaos Bolt being a physical skill. We then want it to be a Rip Blood, triggering Rip Blood, triggering Curse, having more damage and mana on hit, having damage against cursed enemies, having the Reap of Mayhem. This is set up now, so you don't need this node yet, and you don't need these 2 nodes here. Ignore those for a moment. So we go for here, this circle, ignoring this and ignoring these. And then we pick up the Burn to extend the Tonic Fissure, because it does cost a lot of mana. Needing to recast it less often means it's pretty nice to have, because then we just have need to less cast it, and we can focus more on applying the bleed stacks. We also have that it's here that increases or resets the duration of the curses, so the curses never run out. That's also nice. Sadly, the bleed of this does run out even if we extend the duration of the curse. So we also want to grab the chance for an AoE explosion. Just having the chance, it feels decent. That one I got recommended by a buddy, and it does feel nice. I don't know if that is just my buddy doing it or if that's from the meta thing. And then we do have set up this, because I do know that the freeze gloves, the freeze boots, we kind of feel kind of being good. I set up and just spend the rest of the points in the cold conversion, and I don't know if I'm going to pick up any of these. I haven't actually read those yet, and it's kept, so I need to find a way to get more points in here anyway first. Additional points here, I just spent more points in this, and I picked up the additional damage over here. But yeah, that's the build. I've shown the map, I've shown the stuff. I guess the gear is kind of important in this game. Or in any IRPG, sorry, that was a bad statement. The idols that I have, I looked for applying more curses, so I have Damned on hit, we have Bleed on hit, Damned is actually an ailment, not a curse, sorry. We have Fear on hit, we have Health and Resistances, and we have damage over time and physical damage. That's the best I could have found for this specific build. The gear, I mean, level to Spirit Plague. Spirit Plague really helps with single targets, so that's nice. Level to Ketonic Fissure would be awesome. Bleed duration is awesome. Spirit frequency is awesome. Plus 2 skills, specifically physical skills. Damage over time, physical damage feels good. But honestly, this is just like, at least for me, it felt like dot builds in PoE. Try to focus on capping your resistances, get a high life pool, and then get a bit of dot multi damage over time and physical damage, or yeah, in this case physical damage here. A bit of chance to bleed, and it does feel pretty good. I do have set up a bit of dexterity, hoping that that will enough later for the harvest, but we'll have to see how that feels. But yeah, that is the build. Now, I will try to offer this. I don't know how good this will be here. In PoE, usually pretty confident. Here, if you have any questions, any curiosity, feel free to ask. If you enjoy Last Epoch content on this channel, I would like some feedback. I know this is not a really well prepared build guide, more just showing in-game, but it is the best I can currently offer. There is no passive building. There is this Last Epoch build planner, which is nice, but I can show the transitioning of replacing one skill with another on it. All that being said, have a wonderful day, and I will be seeing you in my next video. Goodbye!